Welcome back for another episode of Strive for 25. Joel Farrell here, and looking forward to sharing with you our guest.
Welcome to another episode of the Strive for 25 podcast. I've got an amazing guest on today, James Bracken, and he is the podcast host of You Can Too podcast. And his profile is going to surprise you because he is not 20 years old yet. He is under 20 and still, rocking and rolling out there, doing big things out there in the social media world. But James, thanks for making time for us today.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be here, man. I appreciate you for having me on the show. I'm excited to hop into everything. I know that our values and our missions are aligned in a lot of ways, so I'm excited to give some value to your audience, man.
Yeah, I mean, on this show, we're talking about the everyday person getting ahead and building wealth, and we were talking about this just a second ago. Like in my world, in the mortgage world, for my day job, when I'm talking to somebody about purchasing a house, I break it down into three things: income, credit, and assets. And the biggest limiting factor that I see personally on a day-to-day basis is someone that's not that wants to buy, is ready to buy, but that doesn't have the money saved at that point in time. And so, especially right now, we're talking about somebody's income and expenses and then savings. There's not much you can cut, right? So, what's the other part of that equation? Increasing income, and that's becoming more and more of a topic out there. People making money on social media, affiliate marketing, all kinds of things. And you're somebody that's out there doing things at a very young age, getting yourself out there. And obviously this stuff takes time. And so I'm looking forward to really digging into this with you as you are continuing your journey. So you're 19 years old, right?
Yes, sir.
126 episodes into your podcast. And you started that how long ago again?
About 2 years ago. I started in December 2020, and I started, funny enough, to give some context, I started in my car with no microphone. I started with no guests, but it was the barrier to entry. And I say this because I know so many people out there, people that I'm closely related with as well, that want to start a podcast, want to start a thing, but they put it off because all of the eggs aren't aligned. But I need to say this because people need to just start. And that's the barrier to entry. It's simple, but a lot of people overcomplicate the process.
So that very, very first day that you started in your car,
yeah,
in your mind at that point, what was your purpose? What was your mission? What did you want to accomplish by doing that?
Yeah. It's funny too, because as you know, I'm in upstate New York, and if you're recording in the car and you're trying to make it quiet, you can't have your heat on, and it was 30 degrees at the time. So it's like, I'm freezing. I'm trying to do it as quick as I can. My intention for the podcast is when I became really into the personal development aspect of life and realizing, online business and realizing the value of investing into yourself and the changes that you can make within yourself that translates into business as well. My main intention was to help people unlearn beliefs that really just didn't serve them. And a belief that I found that a lot of people live by is that I'm not worthy or I'm not capable. It's a paradigm that every single one of us lives through, whether we're conscious of it if we're not. And so being able to unlearn that belief through, deconstructing how people got to success, I think is really the main intention. And as I said, I started with no one. So I was starting with whatever I had to say, and I didn't have much to say, but, starting off, I mean, again, you have to start or you never will.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on the same boat, right? Like I've been thinking about this podcast. Well, I've been thinking about this platform for a long time. A podcast never really entered my mind. And I just hit a point in my life where certain things were happening. I was like, you know what? I just need to just start doing it, and haven't stopped since. And yeah, you just got to sometimes just jump in to the deep end, almost head first. So at that point in time, you mentioned personal development and investing in yourself. And what were some of the things that were going on in your life, or things that you were reading or people you were talking to that really had that in your mind at that point in time in your life?
Yeah, the funny thing about it too is I think that a lot of people make this excuse that I didn't come from anything, or I didn't have like a good influence around me. And I'll say I'm the first one in my family to ever go down the entrepreneurial route, at all. So it wasn't even something that was engraved in me, and it wasn't something that I think it was really something that I just came across, just realizing that there was a point in my life where, to give some context of where I was at, I lost my father and uncle both at 37 years old, and I lost my grandfather at 66. My father and uncle both passed early, so they didn't have too much of an influence on me because I was just young and they were never really in my life too much. But when my grandfather passed, he passed the year he was going to retire. And then that really just took me back and realized, like, I do not want to go to a job that I really don't love, that takes me away from my family so that I can not enjoy the fruits of my labor after it's done. And so that really put me into this idea of I need to be really very serious and intentional is the word I like to use about what I'm trying to do. So there wasn't really anything specific. I think I really just was realizing like life isn't going to happen. I like the ideology that success doesn't happen to you, but it happens because of you. And so I started just taking action that led me to where I am, started listening to podcasts, starting reading books, the ones behind me, and just kind of led me down a path to where I am today.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Um, so fast forward to today, a couple years later, you're 126 episodes in, and we're talking about just some of the people you had on your show. I mean, Clint Murphy comes to mind. You know, somebody that's a huge in this space in Twitter and building your brand and process and all that stuff. And you know, when you look at this journey, and we'll dig more into it in a second, but what is your goal at this point with the platform, and more so than just helping people, but in terms of just, you know, a mission for the whole platform, your whole platform, and what do you see it becoming over time?
Yeah, I think I liked. I'm glad you brought Clint Murphy up as well because he kind of instilled a different perspective on the podcast, and he reads about a book a week to have an author on the show to learn because as we know, you learn a lot better when you actually teach something and like you really dive deep into it rather than just learning something. So I find that there's three things that I really get from doing the podcast. One, I can help people. Two, I can learn from the person that is on the other end, and then third, I get to build my network in the process. And so those three are just huge. And then at the end, you know, moving forwards, I'm not even looking about monetizing it right now. I'm just seeing it as a personal benefit for me and the people that listen to my show. So that's the main impact for me right now. But where I see it going, man, I mean, top 1.5% in less than 2 years. And I'm just, there's no future where I see me not doing it. It gives me energy. And I think that this will lead into this as, because I know you talk a lot about like creating those income streams, but I wasn't even looking to get money from this podcast, but it was just more so it felt like a passion project for me. And I think that more people need to lean into things that give them energy instead of deplete their energy. And so my intention for the podcast long term is to just help so many more people stop letting their self-doubt stop them from taking action on what they can create for themselves. As we know, this is a big reason that most people just don't start to begin with.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've second guessed myself on doing this project, Strive for 25. And, you know, the things that were going through my mind for years were, you know what, like the greats, you know, they're so good at what they do. The Tony Robbins, all other people, they're so good at what they do. Like I'll never be that good, or my message isn't good enough, or, you know what, like why would anybody care what I have to say? And, you know, one of the things that I had to get to I don't know how I got there, but I had to rationalize in my brain. Well, what's crazy is that like as much as good as all these people are in this world, they haven't gotten to everybody because, you know, if they would have, there wouldn't be 50% of Americans that have less than $1,000 saved that are just living paycheck to paycheck because
Right.
so many people are struggling. So that that's what I had to get to in my brain to be able to get, okay, I do have a purpose here. I can help, even if it's just a couple people, you know, there's a purpose. Um,
I
yeah,
don't mean I want to add something onto that because I think it's important to realize too this mentality that like there's no one that can replicate what you bring to this world. And so like if you really think about that, you're in my first coach would say to me is you're doing a disservice by not bringing what you can bring to the world into the world. So maybe that is through content, through a podcast, or just maybe going doing speeches or whatever that looks like. But if you're not bringing your true authentic self to the world, you're doing a disservice. There's no one that can bring what you can bring to this world. So even if you feel there's a lack of belief there, belief drives behavior and behavior drives belief. They go hand in hand. So if you just start acting, belief's going to start coming along.
yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I mean, believe, like that's one thing that we talk about here is thoughts affect your emotions, which then affect your actions over time, affects your results. And um, you know, I don't want to go too far into the deep end on this, but like the book that helped me realize that was The Power of Consistency, which I've talked about here on this channel a few times, by Weldon Long. This guy was in jail a number of times, had a kid that he never met, and his dad passed away, and came across all the Stephen Covey, Tony Robbins, all those guys, and, you know, reached a point where he realized, well, if I put positive things in my brain, it by default flushes up the negative things, then
Would have thought.
the rest is history. If you just do it over and over, and like, so like that's something that I adopted myself. He calls it a prosperity plan, and something that I look at my vision, my goals, my action items every morning. And it's like part of my religion essentially, because like that's what helps keep me on task and whatnot. And so you mentioned mentor and coach. Do you want to share a little bit about kind of that journey of like where, when, who that was helping you kind of along your journey last couple of years?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. My first mentor and that trophy that's there came from working with them, but I invested. So I think that the first step towards really making this whole thing come into fruition is investing in myself. I found that as the most impactful thing that has ever happened in my life, because it's like when you make that first initial investment into myself. And to give you some context, I spent $7,500 as a 17-year-old with less than $3,000 in my bank account. And I invested into that because I was like, this just feels right. And I think that the fear that is there, that's the discomfort, is something that people delay. They see it as like the fear is a sign to stop, but that fear is really a sign to go most of the time, because the fear is there. That means there's something outside of that that's waiting for you. So that was the first investment that I made into myself, to really become a coach, learn how to run a business. And then on top of that, start my LLC and my company and everything that entails into that. But I've invested into many coaches and programs and courses along that journey, for social media growth, for just a regular coach, a mindset coach, a business coach. Like, I just find so much power. And as we were talking prior to this podcast, I want to get into real estate investing soon. And I know that I don't want to have to do it alone, because if I can have someone that's already done it and help me get the shortcut to getting there, and if I have to invest some money into doing that, it makes sense. Time is finite and money is not finite. Why would you not invest into yourself? I see it as a no-brainer, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I really like to talk about these examples, because so many people, are that even myself, people that I know, people I talk to, you kind of get into this comfort zone where, and I hate to say it, but like people that have a good 401k, good job, like that's cool. And they're going to ride that and roll with it. That's cool. But at the end of the day, some of the people want more than that. And like Marco Shiro, somebody that we had on the podcast previously, he's in Hawaii. He's a firefighter, has a great job and a pension. And he used the word, if I keep going on this path, this is risky. I'm like, what? Dude, you have a pension and a good job? Like, that's risky. He's like, yeah, kind of the same, similar to what you were saying about other people in his life. His dad passed away, like had a stroke a year after he retired, I think in his early 60s. He's like, well, I might not, if I don't hit my 30 years or whatever the number is, I may not have my pension. What if something happens to me? That's risky, just completely relying on that. It's time to go down a different path. And so that's why that's kind of why I asked this question. So in giving these examples of the coaching part of it. So he had a mentor that he was able to kind of rely on, somebody else in his world that was investing in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, like 4,000 miles away, which is crazy. But like that first couple coaching scenarios, what are some of the things that you learned along the way? And what was kind of the process of getting to where you wanted to go early on?
Man, the course was really, it was very interactive. I think that one thing that I really realized throughout that was the power of expanding your network. And as silly as that sounds, it may not really have to do much with like investing or anything like that, but realizing, as you said prior to this, like being in contact with Clint Murphy and people like that, like you can go so much faster when you stop trying to do it alone. I think a lot of people have this pride that, oh, I'm going to do it on my own, and this is what makes me feel really good if I do it on my own. But you can go a lot faster if you have someone that's already done it or that has a few steps ahead of you. It never made sense for me to try to do it on my own. And I want to touch on what you said a minute ago as well, like for the pension aspect of things. I know a lot of people that are in that same position, but I think of it as 30 years from now, you're relying on that the $2,000 you're getting every month is not $2,000 anymore. I don't know if that resonates for me, but that's the perspective that I take. And I always think like you just have to create a life that you don't have to escape from, and one that, like, again, we create more income so that we don't have to rely on that at the end of the day. But
no, I totally agree. And like, not to again digress, but like I think it was just like in October where like the Bank of England had to like rescue the England pension fund because something was going on with the bonds and lost like 50% of value and like had to plow money into it. It's like, yeah, you don't have control over it. Like somebody else does. But yeah, again, that's a whole different story. But yeah, I mean, so you're spending money on coaching, expanding your network, building the additional skills. And so the did you say you're all also doing coaching for other people, or just receiving coaching?
Oh no, yeah, that's my so yeah, I'm a coach. I help entrepreneurs really simplify the process to achieving their goals. So I think that the main objective or the main obstacle that people struggle with when it comes to just achieving their goals in any capacity is that they overcomplicate the process because they think it has to be so difficult. But most of the time, it's really the obvious things that are right in front of your face that you're just avoiding that's going to lead you to that end result. So yeah, I'm a personal coach for entrepreneurs.
Cool. So just real quick for the listeners out there, where can they find you on social media?
Absolutely. You can find me at James Bracken IV, JamesBrackin IV on any single platform. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube. I'm everywhere you can find me. And then the You Can Too podcast on all the platforms as well.
Cool. So you got the podcast, you've got the coaching platform that you're able to generate income and revenue from. What else do you have going on in your world?
I'm just actually started working with a few companies, really trying to figure out my next track, but I'm gaining my skills in sales as well. So whether that's closing or setting, but just genuinely gaining skills, because I think at the end of the day, what is the main important thing, I think this is where a lot of people go wrong, is they try to find a job that has the income, but not the actual acquisition of skills. And at the end of the day, if you lost that job and you have the income, but then you have no skills on top of that, what are you going to do? But if you have a job that has you're gaining skills and you're getting the income, if anything were to go wrong, you can lean on your skills. And so that's my main intention throughout. I'm 19. That's my main objection, is just to get learn my skills as much as I can. Just build and build.
Totally. So the podcast was the first thing you did, right? And then coaching came along the way. So this is a weird question. Could you see yourself coaching people if you hadn't started the podcast?
Well, I think so
At least at that age.
So the podcast came around the same time I made that initial investment. So to give some context, so I was straight out of high school. I was going to become a real estate agent. I was with a team. I was like the youngest person in Keller Williams. I was going all for it because I knew I was not going to college. Didn't make sense for me. Never did. Was going to be a real estate agent because I realized, okay, this is an opportunity where I can scale my income. There's no cap. Went into that, was with a team in my state, and I was like, I'm going all in on this. I was like, everyone was so hype. And then I had the opportunity to invest into a coaching program, the one that I was just speaking about, and it just felt right. And I had no idea what that was going to lead to. I had made initial investment, and I was like, this feels a lot better than going into becoming a real estate agent where I really have to work for the clients. What I realized in the middle of it was that I want to be an investor, not an agent. And so that was the initial investment. Once I made the initial investment, is why I talk so much about investing in yourself. It forced me to show up. I was not someone to post on social media. I was the last person to post on social media. I had no posts prior to becoming a coach. If you scroll down my 700 something posts that I have, you will see me starting off it's crazy. And that was the initial investment. Once I made that, I was like, okay, if I'm going to post on social media and stop caring about what everyone in school thought about me, I can start my podcast as well. And so I started that, and it's just been a trickle down effect ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. And from a income standpoint, we were talking about that previously. You know, you sharpen these skills doing something else, whether it be a side hustle or whatever. Like I was talking to a friend of mine that he's got a couple of projects that he was working on in kind of the coding and tech world. And a couple of these projects with startups didn't actually get to the finish line. And he was just doing all this work. He was leaving, friends' birthday parties and leaving to go do coding and doing stuff at lunchtime during work and all this stuff. And for 2 separate individual years, like you get to the finish line and you don't get to the actual results you want. And he's like, it sucked. Like it's not the ideal, goal that we wanted to be able to get to. However, the job I had, like I got way better at my job and I got several raises and I was like almost doubling my income because of how good I got at what I was doing. It's like, yeah. Like when you do something on the side like that, it's an opportunity to be able to make yourself more valuable. Like you were saying, building the skills and, you never know what happens when you start just doing the work and doors open that you never even knew.
Yeah, it's so true. It opens your mind up to what's possible because you step into entrepreneurship in some capacity, and it's like there's a lot of people talk about the failures of entrepreneurship and completely understood, but at the same sense there's so much, like, we're only here once, like, and it's something I continuously like to iterate on, because again, I lost a lot of family young. It's like mortality's there, like we're not here for forever. And so, like, why wouldn't you give it a try? Like, I think a lot of people are afraid to, and this is a part of the podcast I just released with Jay Klaus, was a lot of people are afraid to look stupid. They're afraid to being a beginner or looking bad at something. But it's like, you're never going to get good at something if you're not consistently bad at something first. And Clint Murphy talked about it on my podcast, was that, like, the fastest way to increasing your personal growth is through entrepreneurship, because you're forced to see, like, to really work through some blocks that are really hard to jump over.
Yeah, and so a couple of your podcasts, one was on how to overcome procrastination and self sabotage, and some of those things can kind of come in intertwine. Anything you want to share on that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really a lot of what my coaching comes down to. I like to use the word self-sabotage because I think at the end of the day, a lot of us, whether it's a lack of belief or we just don't prioritize it, we always find a way to get in our own way. Like, I think everyone knows what they need to do to some capacity. They may not know the strategy, they may not know a few steps along the path, but a lot of people know what they need to do, but they just avoid doing it. It's like they're like, but a lot of people, the reason that they avoid doing it and that continues to stick is because they never address the underlying reason for why it happened to begin with. They try to like masquerade. It's like putting tape on a hole in the wall, or like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, it's only going to stick there for a little bit, but it's not fixing the overlying and arching problem. So I would say, if there's something that's standing in the way, if you're procrastinating on something or you're putting something off, maybe it's the podcast or whatever that comes down to, ask yourself, like, why? Like, why are you really doing that? Mark Manson talks about it in his The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. He talks, sorry, hopefully that's okay if I
No,
swear, but
you're cool.
he talks a lot about it, the self-awareness onion. And it's like asking yourself why multiple times in a row. So for example, like, let's say I want to build a six-figure business, and you ask yourself, why do you want to build a six-figure business? And you say, well, I grew up, I just want the freedom. I want the freedom that my parents didn't have. Well, why do you want the freedom? Well, because my parents didn't have it. Like, I want to be able to have the freedom that they never had. Well, okay, so you see the trickle down effect of, like, you ask why, and you ask why, and you ask why, and you get to the underlying reason. Most people stay to that first level of, like, I want to make six figures, and they never really get to the underlying reason for why they want to do it. And if you don't have a why, the how or the what doesn't even matter, because you're not going to stay consistent long enough to actually achieve it.
So I'm sure that's something that you're going through that process with your coaching clients and helping them
Absolutely.
uncover.
It's first step for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest struggle working with people that, hey, I know that I want to do this, and just like you're saying, you know what you need to do, but maybe not just executing. What are some of the struggles you're seeing with people getting out of their own way?
I think accountability is a really big aspect of it. And that's why I work one-on-one, because I find that if I can work with someone every single week and literally they're forced to show up. For example, like, I have a client that's he's a music artist, and prior to working together, he would make a lot of music. And you would think that if you're making a lot of music, you're going to improve. And to some capacity, you will. But in the same sense, if you think about it, you can have as much music as you want, but if no one's seeing the music, then it doesn't matter. And so what would happen is he would go in to book a show, and he would just avoid it. Like, he would go into, and then he just would walk out. He was like, I'm just too much fear there. There's too much whatever. I was there, and it would be like, okay, we have to send me a message when you go in there. Like, it has to happen. Like, you're going to let me know when this happens. And he did, a week after he had his first show that he's ever done. And it's like, if someone's there to hold you accountable, to make sure, and they're genuinely committed to helping you get to where you want to go, the only thing that's standing in the way is you. And if you have someone helping you have that external perspective, holding you accountable to raise your standard higher, it's kind of, you can't get in your own way. It's just, there's no way.
Totally. And yeah, I'm a big believer in coaching, like getting out of your comfort zone, having that accountability. I mean, something me and my partner, Mike Swale, and running our mortgage branch that we do personally, and we believe in it 100%, because like you're saying before, like, why not utilize those other contacts to help accelerate the process?
Yeah.
But the other people in your world, right? So you're in Albany, New York, and you mentioned a little bit people around you in school maybe have their own thoughts. But as you've been doing this for a couple of years, what is some of the reactions or kind of context for people around you that maybe want to learn from your road that you've been kind of paving, and what kind of things are going on around you in your network with people, knocking down doors and doing more things from an entrepreneurial standpoint?
Yeah, I think that, like I said a little while ago, I think the pride gets in the way a lot of the time. Because I'll like if I see someone in person that I went to school with or something like that, they'll be really surprised and you're I hate to like it's not egoic in this way, but like you're the one that like just went out of the way and you did it. Like you just got out and like so many no one else that I know, just to be completely upfront, no one else that I know at all has ever went down the entrepreneur route whatsoever. I know people I've met through social media, but no one from where I came from. And so not many people are willing to step out of what they know. And I think that zone of familiarity is what holds a lot of people back from, doing anything that they want to do. And I think this idea of, I don't know how it's going to work, I don't have every step mapped out, just kind of stuns them from taking any action to begin with. So I think that, I mean, I know a lot of people that I can say they look up to my courage for doing it, but just don't have the vulnerability or the authenticity to do it themselves is what I've seen, at least.
So you mentioned before, having your own unique messaging, putting it out there and giving it to the world, right? So the people that are, hey, fearful of doing it, I mean, they're falling into that same trap or cycle that they're missing an opportunity to be able to give and help other people, right?
And I think it's again, it goes back to the why, right? Like, why are you doing it? Like if I started the podcast just because I wanted to make money off it, I would have stopped a week in. Like I know I'm pretty sure it's like a really high percentage of podcasts they only get to like 7 episodes. And I find that crazy. Like if I do something, there's no stopping me. It's just not gonna. There's no way I'm gonna stop. It just doesn't happen. And when I set my mind to something, you just do it. But I think that a lot of people in this idea of like mindset is so misconstrued. Like it's not that important. But at the end of the day, a quote that I live by, is that your professional development will never exceed your personal development. If you don't work on yourself, you're not going to show up for your business. You're not going to show up for anything that you want to do. So yeah.
It's so true. All the health, relationships, business, it all is intertwined. And the word balance, it doesn't exist for an entrepreneur, but you've
Not at
got
all.
seasons and you maybe focus on one more than the other, but you have to be able to give attention, at least in some amount, to all of those other pieces. But that's a struggle, right? Like I'm sure it is for you. It definitely is for me. And I can go on and on about that with a wife and 2 kids, but,
Oh yeah.
so you mentioned that nobody in your world really had the entrepreneurial spirit. And so you're in Albany, New York, and as you get into social media, and you build contacts, like you mentioned, a whole new world opened. It has for me. Not just on the very beginning of my arc here.
Yeah.
So, and that crosses state lines, right? Like you're talking to people in all different parts of the country, if not countries. And can you share a little bit about that experience and just being able to meet so many people in different industries and contexts?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, at least for me, growing up, I didn't really find my tribe, I guess you could say. I didn't really find many people that aligned with not only my values, but like the mindset that what I wanted to do on this world. Like I don't really believe in legacy. Like I'm not trying to leave this massive legacy for people, because anyone that you look up to now that is just seen as this massive person, they're going to be forgotten 200 years later. My intention is to just do as best as I can. And I found that like where I got that trophy in Austin, Texas, I've met some of my closest friends in the world, and they were people that were from all across the world. Like one of my first coaches was from New Mexico. It's like, or Mexico City. And it's funny how like you can meet so many people around the world, but I think that being able to be vulnerable, open, and make connections with people that you never would have been able to connect with unless it was through social media, I see it as a no-brainer. It's like the best networking tool in the world. I get to meet with some of like we would have never met if social media wasn't a thing. So I find it as the best thing. Your network is your net worth, right? Like everyone says, but people really don't understand how true that is. I've gotten so many job opportunities just by being on social media, and it's like they have a lot more opportunity than something that's giving me a certain amount of money per hour. So it's blows me away. I mean, I couldn't see a life without it for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when you talk about social media, like, and just, you mentioned when you start something, you don't stop. Not everybody has that in their DNA, right?
Mhm.
And for me, like personally, I have that ADD personality, and I'm just, hey, the squirrel flies by or whatever, and I'm looking. Like it's hard for me to just mentally stay focused if I have too many things going on. That's just me. Maybe there's other people out there like that. And so for me, that kind of prosperity plan, keeping these vision, the priorities in front of my brain, building that, programming my subconscious brain to be able to reach my goals is part of what I'm trying to be able to do with that. And when I've got this day job that's taking up so much of my mental capacity, because our job is just it's nonstop, right? We're talking to clients on the weekends, after at night, whatever. And so, building these other lanes, building a habit to be able to then do this other work on the side, the side hustle on the side. And, we talked about James Clear and the 2-minute rule. And, if you can build a habit, and it's easy for somebody to forget one day, but when you break the chain that he talks about, you're gonna have to start back over. So, but if you just do 2 minutes, just what, like for me, it was, hey, kids are asleep by 8:30. I'm going all day, and I want to work on this platform. It's what, I feel like shit. I don't want to do it. My anxiety is to the roof, but I'm gonna just take it off the table, bring the anxiety down. I'm just gonna do 2 minutes. I can do 2 minutes, right? So that battle with yourself, you get to the table, you do 2 minutes, boom, and it counts. You don't break the streak. And so like that mentality is kind of what I had going into, starting this platform or social media. And so I've posted a reel every single day on Instagram since July 12th. And not everybody has to do that. It's just, I was late to the game on this. And for this platform, I wanted to be able to do it. And I wanted to keep that momentum going. And, what I didn't realize, or it's obvious for most, but by doing it, even if you don't have a lot of expertise on it, by doing it over and over and over and over, the volume of activity is going to help shape your skills in and of itself. And then you're going to continue to learn. And so the reason why I go down that path is that there's so many things that somebody may want to do. We're talking about entrepreneurialism and building a side hustle or investing or a podcast. It's like, you don't have to have all the answers. Like you said, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have results right away. Just know that it's going to take time. And if someone's willing to do it every single day, even for 2 minutes, and you fast forward the clock a year, 2 years, it's unimaginable what you can accomplish. And with that being said, when you look forward 5 years down the road, I mean, what do you expect to see with your platform and all the things you have going on?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up too, because I started I was very afraid of what other people would think about me when I started my journey for I was 17 years old becoming a quote unquote life coach. I mean, what kind of expectations? I was the youngest person in everything I do. There's a lot of expectation that's being set within myself, but so that's a big aspect too. Like my daily habit, I guess I can say, and I know this is like maneuvering out, but my daily habit was posting every single day too. It was like, as James Clear talks about so much, your habits create your identity. If you just do something for a long enough time, you're going to see yourself as that kind of person. So I would, again, just get started. But my vision for moving forwards, I mean, I definitely see my podcast growing. I don't even want to put a number on it, but I don't even like to think about the numbers, because truly it just takes me away from the enjoyment of doing it and reminding myself of why I started. So my journey is just continuously getting higher guests on the show and just continuing to grow it to get it to the point where I can monetize it, and then I can put more money back into it and just increase the volume of it, because at the end of the day, my intention is to help other people, not really to make money. One of my favorite quotes is that you'll get everything you want in life by helping enough other people get what they want. And if I can do that day after day, I mean, it's just inevitable.
Yeah, that's totally. So speaking of that, with the coaching platform, are you taking on any more clients right now?
Yeah, I have a few spots open right now for one-on-one. Yeah, I have about 2 or 3 spots open right now.
Okay. So a weird question for you. So who is like the ideal type of sweet spot in terms of where they are on their journey? Like the type of client like that, that you can help them succeed immensely. Like where are they at? What's the type of person?
It's tough to say that, because I've worked with so many different kind of people. I've always been told I have an old soul. So it's funny because my oldest client was 43 and my youngest client was 8 years old. So I'm able to work with such a broad spectrum of people, but I like working with people that are committed at the end of the day. Like if you want something, like I like working with people that maybe they do have a side hustle, maybe they have a job right now, or maybe that is their full-time gig. I've worked with people that it's their full-time job, but they just have not been showing up, and we need to excel. We need to really dive deeper into the fundamentals and then really amplify what we're doing. For some people, it's going into that. They have a side gig, and then they have their actual job that's investing into me, a coach, and then their side gig as well. So it's just amplifying that process. I like to simplify, amplify, and just continue going down that path. So it's usually people that have a side gig, or they thinking about starting a side gig, or just people that just want to excel in life to begin with. I just like people that are committed at the end of the day.
Oh, totally, totally. So, so the whole point is somebody who knows that they want something and just struggling to be able to get there, right? And but that's so many people out there,
Yeah.
and but having the courage to be able to ask for help or even pay somebody to help them. And so, in terms of finding your clients, what are some of the ways that you're being able to attract your clients?
Yeah. And I think to touch on that too, I really think the investment is the accountability. Um, because if you're investing in someone that's not uncomfortable for you, you're not going to make a change. It's just not going to happen. And that first initial investment into myself was like, I didn't even have the money to pay it off, so I had to show up. Like it just had to happen, or something had to happen. So that I think investing in yourself is really big. But um my podcast is huge because I'm able to really dive deep. People really get to know who I am and what I'm trying to bring to the world. So um, at the end of the day, if I'm able to really show what my values are, what kind of impact I'm trying to make, because I think a lot of people are out here trying to get money. And at the end of the day, right, we have to live. But like I said earlier, it's like I just want to help people. And if I can help enough people, the money's just it's just something that comes through that. So social media is really big. If I'm able to get out to more people through my message, one video can get 100 views and the next one can get 15,000. It's like, why wouldn't you do that? Like there's so much leverage on these platforms that it's a no-brainer to me. Some people may just put it off. Maybe they're nervous about it, but social media has been big for me for sure.
So, I don't know what percentages of people that are actively using so someone who has a business or a brand or sales or whatever they're trying to be able to do to be able to earn a living in either a full-time job or a side hustle. I don't know what percentage of people that are actually utilizing uh, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all the platforms to be able to help and build the brand. But what if everybody did it? What if 90% of the people out there were doing it? Would there be too much? Would there be an overload? Would there be saturation? Or what are your thoughts on what if everybody was doing that?
I don't think so. Because like if you think about it, there's like TikTok became such a massive platform in such a short amount of time. And if you think of it, there's millions of videos on YouTube, probably billions. And there's some creators that have a very high following, and there's other creators that have very low following. But the purpose of it all is to get yourself out there. Like Mr. Beast is someone that comes to mind for me. That dude did not make money or even Joe Rogan. He didn't make money on his podcast for like 6 years, and people don't even comprehend that. And now he got a multi-million-dollar deal with Spotify. It's like people are so looking for that quick fix or that quick hit of dopamine or that quick investment, but it's not happening. Like as much as there's like I put so much effort into what I do every single day, people don't see the behind the scenes. And I think that a lot of people are looking for the 3 steps to success or the 3 steps to getting the 6-figure job or whatever it is. But I think that, again, reminding yourself that there's only one of you. And if you're not putting yourself out there, you're doing a disservice not only to yourself, but more so for other people. Because if you can help other people through your personal experiences, no one can bring what you have personally went through. So I always go through that. Like I don't think about myself. I think of other people. And it's like this podcast, like coming on a podcast or speaking in person or whatever it is, whatever you're nervous about doing, it's because you're thinking about yourself. You're not thinking about the audience. And that's what I always go back to.
No, I love that. I love that thinking about the audience, not yourself. So let's say everybody was doing it, right? Let's say everybody and we talked about this, previously. What if everybody had a side hustle making an extra $1,000 a month, right? Like I'm talking like everybody. There's certain people who don't need it, cool, but there's a lot of people that are struggling. And what if they acquire a skill to be able to do affiliate marketing or to do XYZ, whatever thing it is? It doesn't have to be online, but what if everybody had an extra way to be able to generate an extra $1,000 a month of income? So many people would be in a better spot. And that's part of the mission for this channel is to help a certain number of people to be able to find that next side hustle and a way to be able to generate extra income. And that's why I love talking about this stuff with you at being at a young age, like you've got an opportunity to be able to help a lot of people in that younger demographic that are in their teens and 20s. And from my desk, I mean, I'm 39, and there's so many more people that I talk to in that the 20-year-old demographic from 20s to 29, whatever. Hey, I like I don't want to be working for somebody else. I want to be working for my dream. Like I'm cool working for somebody else for the time being, but like I want to be able to build my dream, along the way, get out of the rat race. That's more of a conversation that I've ever seen before, for whatever reason. And with what you're doing with your podcast and your coaching and be able to show people that it's possible, it is possible. So then the question was, what's stopping people from doing it? And I go back to this platform. It's like, well, what would I have told myself 10 years ago? And then, okay, well, would I have even listened to the message at that point? And probably not, right? Like probably wouldn't have received it. I wouldn't have got it. So what kind of message would you be giving to somebody in their 20s that, hey, dude, you got an opportunity to do some cool stuff, but why aren't you? Like, what would you say to that person?
I love that question. I'm so glad that you asked that, because I think of it in the sense of not in the past, but I think in the future. So I think a question that I always like to ask myself is, will I regret not doing this at the end of my life? And that, like, it gives me chills just thinking about that question, because it's like, if you're avoiding something, even if there's fear there, if you're going to regret doing it at the end of your life, at the end of your life, you're going to regret not doing the things more than regretting the things that you did do and you failed at. We're here to fail. Like, failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of it, and you got to get used to it. It's just feedback to help you grow. And if you see it as such, you'll start seeking it instead of avoiding it. So I would say, ask yourself that question, because the quality of our life is determined by the quality of the questions we ask ourselves. And if we start asking our questions as though we've already been there, it puts things into perspective a lot easier than asking ourselves, well, what would I tell myself? Or anything like that.
Okay. So the quality of the questions impacts the quality of your life. So right here, right now, what are some of the questions that you're asking yourself? Putting you on the spot here.
Yeah. First one is that right there. It's would I regret not doing this at the end of my life? Another question that I've been asking myself very, very frequently recently is, what am I optimizing for? As you said earlier, we're always in seasons of our life. Am I optimizing for income right now? Am I optimizing for enjoyment right now? Am I optimizing for family time right now? Figuring out what you're optimizing for. A question that you can ask yourself when it comes down to overcoming procrastination or something like that is like, what would this look like if it were easy? We fail to ask that question so frequently because we think it has to be hard. We ask that question, it opens up something in our brain. It's like, oh, what if it? Let's really think about this. What would it look like if it were easy? Another question I ask myself, what's the one thing that if I were to do it, it would make everything else unnecessary? Because most of the time, again, we know what we need to do. But the thing is that we avoid the one thing that we need to do because it's the hardest work, or it terrifies us, or we just don't feel like doing it. So we do all the little things that make us feel like we're making progress, but it's really not. So those are the questions that pop up for me.
I love it. I love it. So I'm going to ask this question because I've been asking a lot of people on this channel, and don't want to beat a dead horse, but Patrick Bet-David talks about, this paradigm shift. Well, a lot of the greats out there that have done amazing things and been very successful have had some type of paradigm shift or some type of hurdle or struggle that's impacted their trajectory in life.
Yeah.
And, the people that on this channel, as I started going through kind of, about 2 months ago, I was like, this is like the arc of people's journey on here. Like, we can define it to a couple different things that have happened in their lives, and like, boom, all of a sudden they take off. And you're only 19 years old. So, I'll ask the same question to you. What type of paradigm shifts or multiple happened to you in your journey to help your trajectory?
Yeah. As soon as you said Patrick Bet-David, the first thing I already knew it was coming up for me. Cause it's the one thing that changed the direction of my life for sure. And I don't know if there was an exact moment or how it really happened, but growing up, like I said, I lost a lot of family. And it really put me in a position of a victim, the mindset of a victim. Like, life was happening to me. It just felt like every single thing happened one after another. I almost died when I was born. I had 5 blood transfusions. They weren't even sure if it was the right blood type. I had 6 stitches, 3 pins in my wrist. I tore my labrum. I played baseball my whole life. I was like, dude, I want to go to college to play baseball. That didn't pan out. There was just so many moments in my life where I felt like life was happening to me, and there was a point in my life where I didn't want to be here, truthfully, and that was a really really low point. And I think that they might see me right now and they're like, "Oh, he just has that mindset; it's just engraved in him." But we all have low points. The mindset that really like the paradigm shift that changed the way I view the world, was realizing that life wasn't happening to me, but it was happening for me. And another question that I asked myself is, how is this happening for me? When we look at things and we look at them as like, this is innate, this is bad, and we inherently see it as bad, we give it no opportunity to be anything more. And so asking that question, how is this happening for me? It opens up my mind to expand. And I think that way too often we think in very short time horizons. We think of like what's going to happen next week because of this, but like what's going to happen in 2 years because of it. And I think asking the question too is like, this ideology. If something bad happened today to you and you consider it as bad, but it led to something outstanding for you 2 years in the future, would you still consider it as bad? And it's likely no. And so when we take away these labels that we place on things and we see them as, we ask the question, how is this happening for me? We start opening up way more opportunities for us in our life because simply we changed our perspective on it. That's it for sure.
Yeah. I love it. And, you know, going back with losing people in your family, right? Like you realize time who knows, but how much time we have. And, you know, personally, I'm 39 and it's like, well, shit, like how much time do I have? If I want to be able to do the things I want to do and make an impact, like it's time to get going. And, you know, I've had a lot of conversations in the last year with people and I'm probably realizing it because now I'm at this point in my life, and realizing to count the number of conversations that I'm going to tell you about. But it's like, hey, I just reached a point in my life where I'm ready to invest in real estate. I just reached a point in my life. I'm ready to get my finances in order. That type of conversation happening, you know, more and more. And that people in their mid 40s, and 30s, in that time frame, because you start to realize time is, you know, it's not unlimited. And so that pain, that struggle that we're talking about, it's going to be different for every single person. But then how do you take it? How do you lose it? How do you use it? How do you use it to keep you down and hold you back and let it affect you? Or do you use it as fuel to go on to the next thing? And, you know, there's not many people that are 19 that are out there with a podcast and meeting all kinds of cool people. And it doesn't mean that that's in the store for everybody. Everyone's going to have their own path, and what's going to make them happy and what is their why, what do they want to accomplish. But if you can help the next person, you know, reach their goal, you know, sometimes that's what it's all about. If you were giving, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to add something there because I recently just started David Goggins' new book, Never Finished, and it just brought something. What you said there is like, if you believe that you can't get through something, and we always take on these identities, we attach to who we think we are, and that creates our results, right? Our beliefs about ourselves. But if you don't think you can get through something, that's what David Goggins would say, is you have to create someone who can. Like if I look back on myself 3 years ago, I could not picture where I am right now. There's no possibility. I can't even fathom it. But it happened because you just take action. And if you just start taking action, things will start happening. But we just overthink way too much, and then we think our life away. I just wanted to touch on that, but go ahead.
No, that I love it. So me personally, like the overthinking, I'm a victim to that. So like a part of the things that I write down is like, you know what, like if I start to overthink things, I just gotta go do one thing and stop the thinking. You know, I have to write that down and look at it every single day because I fall victim to it. Like we're human, we all have our own ups and downs and struggles. And like so I never liked to watch movies more than once. Like for whatever reason growing up, like I would watch a movie, you know, there's a few that I would watch more than one time, but most movies I would never watch more than once. That's just the way that I was. And, you know, later in life, reading the same book, I would never wanted to do it. I always want to do the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And, you know, when you read a book and then you read it again, you're going to get something more out of it. You do it again, you're going to get something more out of it. And like certain books I've read a long time ago, you read again, it's like, well, I'm looking at that way differently than I did 10 years ago. And the repetitions, the doing it over and over and over, like, you know, it's part of the process to be able to get better, to get more traction, to be able to get new perspectives that open up other doors. And, you know, for you, you know, the coaching, the people in your life that have helped you, pushed you, showed you the way. You know, I guess my question on that is, you know, what's the next step for you in your journey?
I think my next step is just to amplify what I'm already doing. Um, I love the track that I'm on, and like I said, I think that just building more skills, becoming a high value individual, I guess you could say, is someone that has something to bring to the world. So as much knowledge as I have, and as much as people may look up to me through the podcast that I've created, and building social media presence, there's still so much more. Like I'm only 19, and it blows me away that I can say that, but there's so much more out there. But I think that the next step for me is just continuously doubling down on what I'm already doing, because it's gotten me. I feel like I've lived a second life within 2 years, and I could only imagine what happens if I just keep showing up.
Damn right. So by the end of this 2023 year, what's like the major goal that you want to hit?
Podcast to top 1% for sure.
Podcast at top 1%. So right now you're at 1.5%.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? What does that actually mean? 1%, 1.5% in a certain field, or what does that actually mean?
In the world. So there's like,
Holy shit, 1.5 in the whole entire world.
Yeah, there's probably 2 million podcasts in the world, or I think there's something around that. I've released that many episodes to the point where I'm already top 1.5%. And I think that 1% is a very arbitrary kind of mindset, but it's just showing myself what's possible when I just continuously show up.
I love it. I love it.
You can find yours on listennotes.com as well if you want to find what yours is.
So as long as I'm not like out of like 2 million, as long as I'm not like 2 million, if I'm above 2 million, I'll be happy with that.
Most people, like I said earlier, most people stop their podcast after 7 episodes. You're more than 7 episodes, so it's there's no hesitation.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm definitely looking forward to catching back up with you down the road here on this show, checking on your progress. And next time, I want to dig more into some transformations with some of your clients, just from a general standpoint. We don't have to be specific, but just I love hearing the stories and people's progress and transformation, because at the end of the day, like there's so much possible if you have the right mindset, you have the right work ethic, you have the right accountability, all that stuff. And last thing, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to be able to book coaching, how would they do that?
I was just going to say that too, when you said you want to see more about like clients, like results. If you go to my Instagram page, the only link, I just changed it actually, but the only link that's there is my testimonials. It's a book, it's a page too. Like I have 3 testimonials there, and then I have a page to book a call with me to see if we'd be a right fit. That's how I like to kind of get a gist of, because the last thing I want to do is bring something into coaching if I don't think I can help them. So that's where you can find it.
Cool. So James Brecken IV is the main.
Yes, sir.
And then
Yes, sir.
your link to their podcast page is on there. But yeah, man, good talking to you. It's been a lot of fun hearing more about your journey, and just pumped for you. And we'll talk soon.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you for having me on the show.
Cool. Take care.